Hello everybody, welcome to our Tallinna Vesi's webinar to introduce the performance of the first quarter of 2015. We are using the new Nasdaq webinar platform, so if you face any technical problems, please don't hesitate to let us know by writing them on the message box in the panel on the right corner. Today's webinar is hosted by Chairman of the Board, Karl Heino Brookes, and Chief Financial Officer, Riina, who will introduce the company's performance in the first quarter of 2015. Karl Brookes and Riina will answer your questions after the presentations. Pre-sent questions will be answered straight after the presentation, and you will then have the opportunity to ask further questions. We will now start the presentation, for which I will hand over the turn to Karl.
Thank you, Maris. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the Q1 2015 webinar today. Our key challenge remains the ongoing tariff dispute, but there have been some recent developments of which we'll inform you later. Aside from this, the underlying performance of the business is very strong, and we continue to provide an excellent service to our customers in Tallinn and the surrounding municipalities. This is further reinforced by our key performance indicators and our continued compliance with the services agreement with the City of Tallinn that sets out very stringent levels of service that must be met by the company each year. I will now provide a reminder of some of the background to the tariff dispute and also an update on recent progress. So first of all, some background. AS Tallinna Vesi has been in court dispute with the Competition Authority since 2011. The dispute arose because the Competition Authority has to date unlawfully refused to approve the annual water tariff applications submitted by the company. In 2012, the Estonian courts deemed the tariff part of the services agreement to be an administrative contract and therefore deserves the full protection of the Estonian legal system. The submitted tariff applications are fully in accordance with the privatisation contract sponsored by the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development and approved by the Government of the Republic of Estonia in 2000. In spite of this, to date the CA refuses to accept the contract should be binding, and therefore the local court case continues and tariffs will remain frozen until the courts have made their final ruling. A number of legal routes are being enacted by the company, of which I'll give you a brief update now. So first of all, the local court case. During this year, we have had 3 hearings, and the court decision is expected in May 2015. At this point, it is important to understand that this is not the final outcome of the dispute held in the administrative court between the CA and ASTV, and both parties have the right to appeal in the next court instance within the circuit court. So basically, whatever the outcome is that we receive in May, either party has an opportunity to appeal. The key thing is that the injunction that's in place at the moment that freezes tariff will remain in force until the outcome of those appeals have been heard. So, international arbitration. After 3 years of intensive effort in trying to negotiate a solution, the Supervisory Council of Tallinna Vesi decided to commence international arbitration proceedings against the Republic of Estonia for breach of the bilateral investment treaty between the Netherlands and the Republic of Estonia. It is being claimed that the Republic of Estonia has breached the fair and equitable treatment required by changes to the law and activities of the public authorities which have deprived AS Tallinna Vesi from tariffs approved according to the services agreement concluded as part of the privatisation back in 2001. This process remains ongoing, and we have no further updates for the webinar at this stage, but an update will be provided to investors as soon as we have any further information. So, finally, Tallinna Vesi and its shareholders are committed to ensure the company's returns are reasonable and in accordance with European norms. Since 2001, the real rate of return made from privatisation is 6.2%, which is comparable with the returns permitted in the UK and the Netherlands. I will now give you a short overview of the operational highlights for 2015. Our first priority is to provide our customers with high quality and reliable drinking water supply and an environmentally compliant wastewater discharge service. As mentioned previously, Q1 2015 was an excellent in terms of operational network performance and the service given to customers. The quality of water supplied to our customers remains very high, with a 100% compliance being achieved against the stipulated standards and against the 732 samples that have been taken in the first quarter of this year. In Q1, the performance of our network has also been very good. The leakage rate ended at 14.6%, a target of 17%. This represents best-in-class performance and is directly linked to the maintenance plans we have in place and the investments that we've made continuously each year. After issuing a revised water permit in September 2014, the wastewater treatment plant effluent has complied with all legal requirements and pollution tax coefficient 0.5 has been achieved. I will now hand you over to Riina, who will take you through the 2015 Q1 financial highlights in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Karl, and good morning to everyone. Now I would like to give you the overview of the financial performance of Akcia's Tallinna Vesi in the first quarter of 2015. I will start with the financial highlights and then will give more detailed overview about sales and costs. The general performance of the company has been good. Sales revenues from water and wastewater services increased by 1.8% or 0.22 million euros compared to the first quarter in 2014. Total sales revenue was 2% or 0.3 million euros higher than in comparative period in 2014. The increase has mostly been influenced by the higher sales from water and wastewater revenues and constructions, balanced by lower stormwater services revenue. Gross profit for the first quarter has been up by 11.2%, being 0.8 million euros higher than in the first quarter of last year. The increase is mainly impacted by lower pollution tax, as in the first quarter in 2014 we had problems with lowered heavy metals concentration requirements in first two quarters in 2014. The operating profit has been higher by 17.6%, being 1 million euros higher than in the first quarter in 2014, mostly being affected by above-mentioned pollution tax impact, but other operating costs and related operating profit continues to be impacted by consultation and legal fees derived from the ongoing tariff dispute, by being 0.13 million euros less than in comparative period last year. Net profit for the first quarter in 2015 has been up by 26.1%, being 1.3 million euros higher than in 2014. Financial revenues and expenses have been highly affected by the impact of the change in fair value of the swap. Eliminating the impact of the fair value change of the swap contracts, the net profit was at the higher level by 0.9 million euros. Now let's move on to the next slides, and I will comment on the changes of revenues and expenses a bit closer. Let's start from the sales. As mentioned before, the total sales revenues for the first quarter have increased by 2% or 0.3 million euros. Total revenues of water and wastewater services were by 0.22 million euros or 1.8% higher than in 2014, amounting to 12.26 million euros. We're still operating with the frozen tariffs since 2010, and the increase in revenues is solely driven by the consumption. In 2015 first quarter, we can see an increase in domestic sector and in outside area water and wastewater services revenues. The domestic clients' consumption has increased by 1.8% to 7.11 million cubic meters. Apartment blocks give the biggest share of our revenues in domestic sector, contributing 81% of the increase in volumes in domestic client group. In the first quarter, the sales to commercial customers has been relatively stable, showing a slight increase by 0.5% or 12,000 cubic meters. Total volumes from outside areas have increased by 15.6% or 256,000 cubic meters. This now takes us to the overview of costs. The company's underlying performance in the first quarter has been good. The operating costs in the first quarter of 2015 have decreased compared to the same period in 2014 by 9.6% or 0.73 million euros. As mentioned before, the biggest impact comes from 0.78 million euros lower pollution tax costs related to 400 times lower concentration requirements for heavy metals in the first and second quarter in 2014. The problem is eliminated with the current water permit that is valid till the first quarter 2018. Other direct reduction costs have remained relatively stable compared to the first quarter in 2014, being impacted from a combination of changes in prices and movements in treated volumes. Other costs of goods sold have increased by 6% or 0.07 million euros. It is mostly related to the increase in the costs related to the construction service revenues. 11.8% or 0.18 million decrease in administration expenses, mostly affected by the decreased legal and consultation costs related to the tariff dispute. The company has ongoing tariff dispute locally and internationally, and the legal costs are expected to be at the high level also going forward. Net financial expenses have been mostly affected by the non-monetary revaluation of the fair value of the swap, having the positive impact of 0.4 million euros. In April, the company signed 4 new swap contracts for the total notional amount of 45 million euros. The agreements will become effective from the 1st of June 2015. The average fixed interest rate is approximately 2.9% lower than for the contracts that will come to an end, having an impact on the interest expenses around 0.8 million euros. If we would now move on to the cash flows. The cash position as of 31st of March 2015 is strong. The company's cash balance stood at 46.4 million euros, forming 21.9% of the total assets. Compared to the end of first quarter in 2014, the cash balance has increased by 8.2 million euros. The biggest contribution to the cash flows comes from the main operations. The company's average receivables collectability rate in 2015 has been again at the highest level by being 99.74% on average. The company's cash flows from investing activities have been positive since the beginning of 2012. In the 3 months of 2015, net cash from investing activities resulted in a cash inflow of 0.48 million euros. During 3 months, the money paid for fixed assets have been showing an increase of 23% or 0.34 million euros compared to the comparative period in 2014. The compensation received from the pipelines amounted to 2.3 million euros in 2015, which is an increase of 0.8 million euros compared to the same period in 2014. Majority of the amount is related to the collection for the network extension program, the collection of which ended in March 2015. On 27th of May 2015, the annual general meeting will be held, during which the dividend payment will be voted for. The dividend payment proposed to the annual general meeting is 90 cents per share, per A share, which is equal to the dividend payment compared to the last year dividends. The payout is in line with dividend policy of the company. Despite the fact that the CPI has been negative, it has been proposed to the annual general meeting to keep the dividend at the same level to the last year. I would like to thank you for your time and attention, and now I would like you to ask all the questions that have arisen.
We had one pre-sent question, so before we take any, it was already covered by Karl's presentation earlier regarding the latest update on ongoing tariff dispute. Mr. Saad from Aripäev, are you happy with the information provided earlier? You can write on the question box, perhaps. The question was about what's the latest update on court disputes, and when will the next hearings will be held?
Okay, so just to recap, we've had 3 hearings this year. Mm-hmm. The final hearing was held in March, and we're expecting a decision in May. So that's the latest, but the key thing is the injunction remains in place.
Thank you. So any more questions? We will wait a bit. Yes, one question. Thank you, Jonas. Could you please again re-elaborate about the current tariff injunction and the potential development of this after the administrative court decision?
Okay. Yes. So just be perhaps a bit more clear on this. We got an injunction in place back in 2001, which froze the tariffs. 2010. I stand corrected. My understanding is, and the legal advice we've received, is that whilst the court process is still going on, and we're likely to go into perhaps a second or even a third stage of the court case, that injunction will remain in force until the final decision has been made. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you, Jonas.
We will give it a couple of minutes because it takes time to write. At the moment it seems quiet. It seems like there's no more questions. Thank you. Are there any updated recalculations of expected tariffs and sales by 2010 legislation change?
Could you elaborate on this one a little bit? If you bear in mind the contingent liability, then the contingent liability itself was reviewed at the end of last year, showing a contingent liability of 40 million euros, and which is also disclosed in the note in the annual report and in the interim report.
We will take the next one, and if Mr. Lashak didn't find that conclusive, then you can ask. Elaborate.
You can always elaborate.
Yeah.
Just to understand what you're after.
Yeah, thank you. Peter, please, some questions. Do you see any willingness from the newly elected parliament to change the legislation to solve the dispute?
As mentioned previously, the company is always open to a negotiated settlement. Perhaps it's a little early really in the formation of the Parliament, and we've not really heard or had any contacts so far, but it would be good if that was to happen.
Thank you, Karl. Mr. Lashak, did you get your answer earlier? I will send all participants the presentation we've seen later, and if you have any questions you can send them via email as well. It seems like there is no more questions, so thank you everybody for participating.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you and have a nice day.